Morning to the people in our beautiful Awakened Parenting group, and we're very honoured this morning to welcome Alister McDonald to talk with us about parenting. Alister, first and foremost, for the purposes especially of this talk, is a father of two. They're 18 and 16, aren't they? Girl and a boy?
16, yep.
Yep. And he's also played a lot of footy, been president of the footy club, been a ruckman in the AFL. So that's a big part of your life. Been self-employed for over 20 years and runs a business that has 30 staff and 50 million turnover. So it keeps him busy.
I'm a bit pedantic, Ilka, so I should just clarify a couple of things there.
Okay.
I didn't actually ruck in the AFL because that's I have rucked in AFL football games at amateur level.
Yes. Yes. Okay, yeah. Yes.
So
the AFL.
So that's the South Melbourne Districts, the Swans.
Yep.
We're the Swans that they left behind. And and of course around there I'm known as Big Al. That's it, just Big Al.
Big Al.
Big Al or Alligator.
Alligator.
Yeah, apparently I cut a fine figure in the compression gear, so alligator it was. And then the business. Now I no longer run that business in any way.
Okay.
So it's what you said was almost true. It's around 300 staff.
Sorry, I wrote 30 staff.
That's okay.
Gosh, it would have to be more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're always sort of nudging that 50 million turnover right now. So yeah. I'm now a shareholder. I was a founder when it first started, and I was overseeing admin and finance probably till around the 10 mil turnover, and then I left the board. Then I rejoined when we merged and became a much bigger company. So, yeah.
And you also run a real estate business with your sister. So,
so she's the officer in effective control, so she runs it.
And you do, and I think probably your passion at the moment, would you say, is coaching and mentoring others, and
totally, yeah.
That's the fun part.
Look, it's funny because I never wanted to be a successful business person. My old man was a successful business person. I definitely didn't want to be that. What I found, of course, is that I got what I didn't want, and once I confirmed that I didn't want it. By getting it, I then turned to what I really wanted, and that is to absolutely see other people fly and achieve what they want to achieve, which I love. I love doing.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we've been asked to ask you from our awakened parents is what was kind of the catalyst for you becoming more conscious in your life?
Oh, it's a great question, and Ilka, you know me reasonably well, so just either cut me off or, herd me as you need to.
And of course, how did it help you with your children is the main, and right. your partners and, in relationships, how did it help you?
Right. And they're all related, of course.
Yeah. So
the reason why I preface that is because it actually started for me at 16 years of age. And the thing is, at 16, I had something. I had a feeling or a thought, or I don't even really remember quite what it was. And I remember standing on the nature strip at the front of the house talking to a friend, and I was trying to explain to him what I could feel inside. And like any 16-year-old male, now, is it okay if I swear?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Okay, so I'm talking to a mate, 16 years, and I'm trying to explain to him this thing inside. He didn't know what the fuck I was on about. And he was a really nice guy. He didn't quite put it that way, but it was clearly what he wanted to say. So it started for me at 16, and I'm now 48. The thing is that I don't know if this is what most men do. I suspect it is. I kind of just squashed it down. Oh, well, that didn't make sense to him. It's not going to make sense to anybody. It's just bullshit anyway. It's probably, the crap that women go on about all the time, whatever it was that was going on in my mind. So I let it go. And the thing is that it kept kind of poking me in different ways at different times. And eventually, for me, I was faced with no choice. And this is something I see with men and women, mostly men, I've got to say, is that the sort of prompts, the things that keep coming up for us, I found kept pushing me towards answering this question, whatever it was. So then it was jump into understanding myself and understanding what the hell's going on a bit better.
When you say things that came up,
Yeah.
what sort of things? What do you mean?
Oh, well, I mean, the classic is that relationship, you know. So I got into a relationship at 19 with no real experience. I was actually scared of women. I've realized now I was actually scared of women. And I was 6'3" and 100 kilos and scared of women. And, you know, now I wasn't scared of women. I was not connected. I was not connected at all with what women can bring or who they are or how they are. And I guess we fear what we're not connected to. We fear what we have no understanding of. And yeah, so that was one of the big ones. And, you know, relationship at 19, married at 23, kind of miserable in the last few years of it. So I you know, truth is I walked away from it in year 20, whatever, you know, 22 of marriage and 26 or whatever of the relationship. Yeah.
So what did you start to do to, you know, I mean, this year you've started doing Landmark. How has that been?
Landmark is the conversation I've been looking for. So had I looked at Landmark when I was 16, I would have got it straight away.
Yeah.
And ironically, I was introduced to it probably at 19. And because I'd already kind of made that decision to squash things, it was like, mate, look at you. You're inviting me to Landmark. I don't want to be like you. Why would I do that? I don't need that. I don't need that.
What, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Look at you. What did you think about that person who was doing Landmark?
Well, I guess we're out there now. He was my brother-in-law for a long time.
Right.
And I've learned to appreciate him, especially now that I've been to the Landmark stuff, especially. So only recently. But over time, I appreciated the things about him that I let myself appreciate, if that makes sense. But, you know, at the time, he was the older one and he, you know, so he was just this bossy, bigger brother, you know. So what the hell would I want to listen to him for?
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting when you talk about your wife and you leaving your marriage, because one of the questions was, do you think your first wife was attracted to things in you that she didn't have in herself and vice versa?
Absolutely. And I haven't gotten to the bottom of it all yet because she hasn't spoken to me for the last 3 years. So as I've been becoming a lot more aware of a lot more things, I feel like I've been denied the opportunity to explore it with her. And fair enough, she'll say I denied the opportunity when I walked out. So, you know, whatever it is what it is. But it's funny. I have a feeling even Ilka, you might have said opposites attract. And that may be true. In scientific principles, they repel each other.
They do both.
Sometimes. And they sometimes attract. That's right. So, but like I'm thinking of like oil and water. Oil and water do not mix. You know, it depends on how we define that opposite.
Yeah.
So certainly polarity is something that often will attract some and it will repel some. I kind of woke up to a realization. So this is my belief. And that is, I mean, I was the apparent bad boy. You know, so by the time I was 13, I'd been in a divvy van and I'd had the police interview with my parents present and got the warnings about what would come next. And then I went back out in the world and did exactly what I'd done to end up there. I really didn't care at that point. And I guess realistically, I didn't get what I wanted to get by being in trouble, which would have just been the right sort of attention, I'm sure. So by the time I was 19, you know, so by that time I had dreadlocks and wore a camouflage jacket and I drove a HQ with Jimi Hendrix on the bonnet and I gave all the impression of being, you know, this bad guy. And it was funny because when my wife's parents challenged her on what she saw in me before we were even married, her answer was that she liked me because I was bad. And the weird thing is I've not actually ever been a bad person. And so I guess there I was playing that game. There she was falling for that. And I felt like over the years that our ability, not her ability, our ability to connect with the real version of each other was a real problem.
Yeah, oh, can we dig on that?
By all means, dig as hard as you like.
Okay. So, yeah, can you elaborate on that? What, when you say problem, what do you mean by that?
Well, okay, so this is my version because we've not explored it together, but it's like so whatever she defines as bad is what has attracted her to me. However, the label I've gotten is bad. And then on top of that, you know, throughout the different stages of marriage, she's trying to communicate with me, and she and I had a real poor ability to communicate with each other. We didn't speak the same language. And, you know, I read her communication as criticism, and funnily enough, she read my communication to her as criticism.
And how did that all play out with the kids? Tell us a bit about what happened.
Well, of course, and this is a critical thing for every parent to understand if they don't already. And I'm going to say, if you hear this and you don't do something about it, you're a fuckwit. All right? You can ask
I don't know why she thought you were into criticism, Alister.
Right, you can ask her for my phone number, and you can take that out on me if you want to. But I'm just being blunt. Okay, I was a fuckwit.
Yeah, no beating around the bush.
I was a fuckwit. Okay, I did not. I knew that my kids.
Oh, you're calling yourself a fuckwit.
I was, and that's why I'm prepared to call anyone else who does not take this and do something with it.
Yeah, okay.
Just explore it. If you don't agree at the end of it, great. But just explore it. Don't just say that's bullshit, because that's not good.
Yeah.
The thing is that I was a kid. I had parents. I watched them. I know that I was unhappy about a lot of what I saw. So I was determined in my relationship to not be like that. And again, I got what I didn't want.
As we do.
Yeah.
Well, and again, we do. We will get what we want. We will get what we don't want. I've found whatever I feel the strongest emotionally about, I will get. And so that's something to be careful of. But that's it. We ended up, you know, so I wanted to be the best role model and the best parent. And I didn't end up being the worst, but I certainly was less than I could have been. And, you know, a really cool Christian guy that I know, and he really is a cool Christian guy, you know, he's always dropped these gems on me over the years. And one of the things he pointed out was that our kids will learn. So my son will learn mostly how to be a man from me, and he will learn how to treat women from me.
Wow.
And then daughter, the vice versa.
Yeah, that's gold.
It is. And for me now, it's obvious. Now it's obvious. But when I was a fuckwit, it wasn't obvious.
So did you have lots of differing opinions on how to treat the children?
Well, I wasn't seeking them. That's why I feel so strongly now about it. I wasn't seeking the opinions. And it was funny because
between one another.
Well, between ourselves, we just didn't really communicate constructively about things. So she was and still is a primary teacher, you know, and I know that she was committed to that, and I know that you know her heart was to see kids educated and have opportunity, and you know, and I get that, and I wholly appreciate that. And my experience of school was that it was underwhelming, it was boring, you know, I was bullied. I bullied others. Like my two favourite days of my life until university were the end of primary school and the end of high school. They were the two favourite days of my life. So, you know, for me, school was really poor. And up until that point, I blamed the teachers. And it was later.
And you married one.
Why? I wonder why that is.
Talk about going for what you don't want.
Well, that's it. And the thing is, later when I did personal development, my eyes were open to the fact that teachers are teachers, and the system that they buy into is where the problems lie. Yes. So I now do my best to separate the individual and who they are and what they're attempting to achieve from the system that they work in.
Yeah, yeah. And so what was your input into the children as they were growing up? What do you think? Okay,
so you know, so in that sort of reaction of what I don't want, I definitely committed to spending more time with them. Yeah. And I did spend more time with them than my dad spent with us. However, it was still a battle. It was always a battle. And I had to make ridiculous commitments to make that happen. And so I guess, you know, one of the things I've sort of decided along the way, I say learnt a lot, but, you know, I don't learn anything. I just decide things. I just make opinions about everything. I don't really understand anything. So what I decided was that, you know, I was inherently my old man, his old man, his old man. I was inherently all of those men before me, and it was going to be a battle to be anything else. Unless I started to find the right tools, the right people, the right processes to get a lot deeper than what I'm capable of doing and affect real transformation.
So are you saying to break those patterns of your past?
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
I haven't delved in. I'm not a researcher, so I'll admit it. I'm not a researcher. So you come to me and say, show me the textbook that told you this. I'll say, well, no, I don't read textbooks. I dislike school textbooks and all that stuff. Now that I've realized the value of teachers and I've realized actually I learn best from teachers, I just look to the teachers. So for me, I'm just having conversations like this. I will learn out of this conversation. You know, I'm already learning out of this conversation. And other conversations I have, I will keep learning as long as I'm open to what there is to learn. Now, that's all great. However, what I've found is unless I find a way, and you know, I'll be open and honest, Ilka, you know, doing something like the faster EFT. And again, when people say, what is it? I'm like, emotion. I don't even know what it is. Because I don't care. I don't care what it is. I care about the result, you know? Yeah. And the result, you know, the results have been powerful. I mean, I think of that day on the cliff with the weather. I mean, that was ridiculous. So, but you know,
first weather that day.
Oh, it was amazing. But the first interview, the next day, I meet a woman who's now my current partner. She ticked all the items on my list that were important. And I say that because I had a whole lot of physical attributes that she wasn't, but I realized they were not as important as the other attributes. And yeah, she ticked all those and more, you know. And as far as I'm concerned, faster EFT, first time ever, day one. Day two, meet this woman. It's a really
Yeah. And what about with your kids, Alister, now?
Okay. So I guess once I started to wake up to, everything I do impacts them, my way was just to start talking openly with them. And I found a few interesting things out of that. First of all, my kids, from my perspective, my kids were able to have that conversation with me. And I've had other people around me. This is where I was avoiding that whole, just listening to advice, because there were people around me, including psychologists, child psychologists. Yes, I know your daughter's very mature, but, it's better not to have adult conversations with her. Now, I didn't see the need to argue with her, so I didn't argue with her, but why the fuck can't I have an adult conversation with my teenage child? Why? Where does that...
agree!
Yeah. What if she's having the conversation and she's asking questions and she's understanding it to whatever extent she's able to? Why can't I have that conversation? And it's, and there's other people around me, even in my family, who work in different social welfare, and they all have this thing about don't have conversations, adult conversations around your kids. You know what I'm realizing? I'm realizing that they don't want to have a conversation that exposes their bullshit in front of my kids. That's actually what it is.
Yeah.
That's pretty big.
And that's the truth.
No, that's huge. Many of us don't want to own our own bullshit and not only not own it ourselves, but certainly not show it to our children.
And they're seeing it all anyway.
Yeah, actually that answers one of the questions. I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the questions is, how do you speak to them? How much of your past, for example, would you expose to them?
All right. Now,
have you told them you got carried off in the divvy van?
I've told them that one.
Yeah.
So I'll be a little more subtle here because I feel like it's appropriate.
Yes.
So by the end of my marriage, I was completely nowhere. Like, that Beatles song, Nowhere Man? That's like a pleasant version of where I was at, but I was nowhere, I was nobody, I was nothing. And like I was totally emasculated, I was just totally nothing. And so I went into a world of darkness, and I went through a whole lot of experiences, and some of them were super crazy. And some of them were bordering on probably occult. Now, I didn't choose that, but that's the world I ended up in. There was some crazy stuff. And so I sort of had lost myself completely. I don't talk to my kids about that yet.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, like, that's not an adult conversation. That's a potentially destructive conversation. Now, am I open to discussing that with them? Absolutely. So I don't have fear
if
of
they
it.
were to ask you, if they were to say, I mean, a kid probably may not ask this question, but if they say, oh, Dad, what was your deepest, darkest time in your life? Would you answer that honestly?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. If they ask me that right now, I'd have to. Yeah, I'd have to. And with my daughter, for instance, she now lives with me. With her, I have said to her more than once, look, there's a whole part of what happened with me and your mum that you don't know. So go easy on her. But there's a whole lot you don't know. And one day we'll talk about it. Just not yet. So I already told her that she'll know more. And it's just a matter of, giving that to her in a way that supports her, doesn't challenge her further.
Yeah, because I always think, though, it's coming from the child asking the question of you, not you, giving up information freely. It's you're honestly answering their questions that they have, because they'll only ask to the level of what they want. I mean, my children will very quickly say, enough information.
And
then I'm sharing.
There was another question around that perhaps isn't so relative, given that your children are older, but when you have, and that you haven't seen your ex-wife for a number of years, but the differing values and how you communicate those.
And that's a great question, because along with the communication, that was another part of it that we'd done no work on and had taken for granted, and realised that there wasn't an alignment. And what? Yep.
Like, what advice would you give to a married couple that got young children? What do they do to help communicate better? Because it is a huge issue.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
All couples.
That's a really good question, because here's the problem I've had, and that is, once I'm in a situation, and I get that it's me and my personality and my way of dealing with the world. Once I'm in a situation that I believe is fucked up and beyond redemption, then it is, and therefore that's it. There is no redemption. And so when I've been coaching, it's business coaching, right? But unsurprisingly, I attract guys who have got problems with their partners, and I've even occasionally the women who have got problems with their partners. And I will always say, I am not qualified to talk about this. I'm in a screwed up X thing and still working out the next thing. And so I'm not qualified. So I'll only talk about it if you want to, and if you understand I'm not qualified. Now, strangely, everyone's wanted to hear what I had to say anyway. I found that interesting. Yeah. So anyway, everyone now that's watching this knows I don't think I'm qualified, okay? So what I am learning, though, what I'm learning is, first of all, I have an impact on the world that I have no clue about.
Yeah. So as in it's subconscious, you mean?
Oh, I know. I have a physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, call it what you will, impact on the world that I'm not even aware of. Now, I suspect that every human being has an impact on the world that they're not aware of. We're all different, so I come across as dominant and aggressive, and, will get my way at all costs and those sorts of things. And just by the way, what's going on internally is this person's trying to dominate me. They're trying to make me do what they want them. I'm defending myself. When I come across as this aggressive, whatever, I'm actually defending myself. That's what's going on internally. And what I've found is that the most insightful people, they know straight away. They know that the grizzly bear is hiding the teddy bear. They know. And the thing is that now this might resonate, especially for some guys. Actually, it might resonate for guys and women. My old man was from far north Queensland. And I guess
like Joe's.
Okay. So you know all about it, Joe. So the thing is that there's these male archetypes, these Australian male archetypes that we read about. He was one of them, And so now he was multidimensional. He traveled to England. He met an Iranian woman. He married her. So he was multidimensional. However, what had crafted him was this far north Queensland country male, everything, ethic, value system, whatever it was. So, and the further I look back, as far as I know, I can't see any adults, any partners as adults, as partners, ever communicating on their values, on how they're going to do things, really. I think it's been quite patriarchal on both sides of my family, which means, yeah, male makes the decisions and the woman kind of makes it work. And I mean that. I mean, like, male makes the decision, a woman has to make it work. And somehow there's this compromise made where everybody gets along. And again, I knew growing up, most of my adult relatives did not get along. So, okay, come back to your question. And I'll just be blunt again. What has helped me massively in all of this is doing some landmark training. And, you know, I was introduced to that. Again, I was introduced to that as a teenager. Said, no, that's not for me. That's for you. You're fucked up. I don't need that. And, you know, when I stepped into it, it wasn't because I was fucked up. This is another thing. Like, I'm working on one of my brothers right now just because I can see the benefit for him. And he's like, oh, I don't need that. She needs that. Eh? I'm like, I'm not inviting you because you need it. I'm inviting you because it will open up a whole new thing for you. That's all.
It's an up level, not need fixing.
Totally that.
Yeah.
And, see, they nailed me in the first session. And I've been in business 20 years and I always get what I want and I always drive for what I want. So I make decisions quickly. And once I turned up, because even when I signed up, it still took 1.5 years for me to turn up. So I get the fact that no matter what I say I am, I'm still a bullshit artist who will half commit and not really do it and not want to do it and all that. But, you know, I turned up and in the first session, it was like they nailed me with 2 things. And if they didn't nail me, I would have walked out and never come back, right? But they nailed me with 2 things. One is that I know what I know and I know what I don't know. So I don't know much about faster EFT, you know? And that's something I know. And I don't know anything about Jo. And I know I don't know anything about Jo, right? But then there's this world where I don't even know that I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, and the example I gave earlier was until I started doing the landmark stuff 2.5 months ago, I hadn't even thought about the impact I had on other people. Now I've got signals coming at me all the time, and they're a mixture of people who are pumped up and inspired and excited and people who are just angry at me, you know, and obviously everything in between. And of course, I'm always looking at them, blaming them. And what landmarks help me see is that it's not my fault. It's not like there's something wrong with me. However, I do things in a way that then gets a response from my environment. And I can't tell which ones are insightful and which ones aren't. So the ones that are insightful are just good guys and the ones that aren't are beep, beep, beeps, you know, in simple terms. And of course, what I now realize is everybody's where they're at. Everybody's got the same stuff going on as me in their own way. And so they're responding as best they can to what they're getting from me. And yes, I'm 6'3" and now a little bit more than 100 kilos.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to like your dad and how he grew up and the impact on you,
yep.
and then go into landmark. But how did that change who you are in your relationship today, like male, female?
Okay, well, so I guess when you mention my dad, you're probably talking about where I was at versus where I am at. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Well, so one of my striking memories growing up was one Christmas where so my grandparents would come down from North Queensland every second year probably. And so one Christmas, I'm probably 15, 16, whatever it is. My mum is trying to get my dad and I to hug, right? And she does it in the most uncomfortable, embarrassing, you know, way. And he wasn't comfortable with it, and I certainly wasn't, you know, and so it was really weird. So that to me was the classic symbol of how I'd grown up and the sort of relationship I had with the main male in my life. And then a lot of the rest of the experiences were watching him in his work environment, because to see him, we would rock up to work, you know, on a Friday night. We'd sit in the boardroom, you know, cracking into the minibar. We were drinking tomato juice, of course.
Of course.
But, you know, I would watch him. He was surrounded by what we call alpha males. Now, by the way, I didn't know what an alpha male was until recently. But he would be surrounded by them, and they were looking to him. That he was their leader. And I'm talking about guys like Neil Baum. And Neil Baum back in the day, 70s, whatever it was, he was one of the guys who the coach would say, you've got to go out and take that bloke out. So Neil Baum's job was to knock blokes out so they could not play football anymore. And guys like him were looking up to my old man, right? So these are the signals I'm getting, and I'm like, that's the way the world is. But I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what that meant. And so then the next major thing for me, this was a watershed for me. I had a day of coaching that was, it was full on. I was with a woman called Tanya Lacey. And particularly for any men that are just looking to have a conversation with a woman, apart from, I don't know you, Joe, but apart from, Ilka can provide a great feminine energy for a male to sort of explore himself with, but Tanya is another one, and she was the first one I came across. So in short, during that day, I went from not understanding my physical presence, right? So, and this is late 20, I always get confused. I think it's late 2015, maybe 2014, maybe late 2014. It's certainly only in the last 5 years. So 5 years ago, I felt like a small person.
6'3" small person.
Sorry?
6'3" small person.
Well, I felt like a small person. When I started playing footy at 39, because I wanted a real challenge, and I was playing hockey and basketball, and those sports are shit. They're not a real challenge. So I started playing footy, and it was what I needed. And everyone around the club was calling me Big Al, and it sort of didn't register for me. It was like, that was a strange thing for them to call me. It really was. And they put me straight into the ruck, and I thought that's a really strange choice too, because there's all these big blokes in the ruck. Like I'm not joking. This is what was my internal dialogue was. And so for those that don't understand what's going on for some people, and there's a complete incongruity, well, that might be what's going on, a version of that. And for the guys that had a version of that or some other version of complete incongruity, hey, it's all good. I've been there. I get it. And there are others who get it too. So don't hide. So in that session, a lot happened, but Tanya helped me suddenly realize my physical presence. And I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. For the next 5 weeks, I felt like I physically grew. And even now, when I'm walking, which I do a lot of, if I think about it, my head feels a lot further away from the footpath than it used to. I'm not joking. And a coach I had.
Is that a good feeling, Alister? Like, it's a good feeling.
It's amazing because I've grown into myself.
Yeah.
And that is the start. That's only the start of actually being who we can be. That's not the end, it's the start. So in the last 5 years, I started to be who I can be. And I freaking needed the help of switched on people to get there. I really did. Oh. And so I had a coach at the time, and he put it this way, just for those who are now thinking, oh, this guy, I thought he was a freak at the beginning, now I know he is. First of all, fuck you, you're the freak. But second of all, my coach at the time just said, hey, anorexia, what's anorexia? It's when a person looks in the mirror and sees a fat person. But So all I had was a kind of different version. No one diagnoses that shit because no one talks about it. I never heard anyone talk about it before. But it's just another version, isn't it? And I'm going to suggest that what was happening was my whole spirit, my whole way of being had been compressed, collapsed by the way I was living, by what I was accepting, by the relationships I was fostering and being a part of. Yeah. So that was a key day, Joe, that really started to turn things around. So then after that, yes, I let go of a lot. I became a more relaxed person, a more amiable person, and more of those things that people prefer to experience. However, there was still that edge that would come back and bite me at times. And for a while, it was quite incongruous for me because I thought, hang on, I've been through personal development. I've learned a lot. Why is this coming back? And again, one of the things that Landmark showed me was that, and this is supported by a whole lot of other practices, including modern psychology, that really who I learned to become as a child, and people say 5 years, 7 years, 9 years, who cares? As a child, who I learned to become then is who I'll always be. I will not be somebody else. And so it's not so much about changing who I am. And this is what I suppose in some ways what we're most scared of, changing ourselves. It's not about that. It's just about starting to understand our impact, because our impact is fine. It's fair. It's reasonable. There's nothing wrong with the fact that I come across as a complete arsehole. It's gotten results for a whole lot of people. It's not. And the people who think
your 300 staff aren't complaining.
Correct. And the shareholders that were invited in because of my way of doing things, which I did learn from my old man, by the way. You know, that yes, I'm a capitalist. I'm running a factory that's profitable. However, I do things in a socialist way because I know that my workers bring all the results. You know, so even guys like that can work it out. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then just what Landmark opened my eyes to was, okay, there's this impact, and I can have an impact that does serve more people in a better way. So it's still my choice. I don't have to change a thing. I can still be who I was because it worked. But you know what I knew was that getting what I wanted on its own doesn't work, because having everything for yourself and having no one to share it with, well, what's the point of that? Wow. So now I you know, and now in my current relationship, it could have ended on more than one occasion, even though we feel like such a good match. Like we feel like a lot of the things that kind of destroyed our first marriages aren't there with us. But, you know, we're still there and we still carry all that childhood bullshit. So having the Landmark conversation and having that knowledge has helped me step back and say, all right, what she's telling me now, I'm having that old impact that I know doesn't serve her, and it's not right or wrong. It's just not serving her. So what can I do that's different to just repair the situation, build a bridge? Yeah. And it's brilliant. It's powerful.
So does your partner do Landmark or work with Ilka or similar sorts of work? I imagine she'd have to be into personal growth.
And that's bingo, Joe. I think that's critical. I just don't believe. Now, I might be wrong, but I don't believe any two people can get along if they don't, and we touched on values earlier, if they don't have some common values. And growth is a massive value for me, so it had to be there with her. That was on my list. And so the night we met and we talked a lot, and, you know, it was evident, I think, to both of us that personal growth was important. And so her background is doing a lot of yoga. And, you know, and the more she talks about that, the more I talk about the Landmark stuff or other things or EFT, the more parallels there are between all of them. So
yeah, definitely.
She did the forum with me, and, you know, she had a powerful weekend herself and she appreciated it. It's just at the moment she's preferring yoga, so she's sticking with that. And my attitude is, you know, as long as she's looking after herself and maintaining that elevated sort of thinking, I'm okay. I mean, it doesn't have to be what I'm doing.
So does communication come easily for you two?
So that was one of the things from day one. It was just more natural.
Yeah.
You know, I've had a handful of relationships since being married, and I've been pretty open with all of them. So they do know all of those deep, dark secrets to whatever extent they wanted to know. So she found out about all that the first night. In fact, we swapped relationship stories for the first night. That was kind of most of the conversation. And that ability to be open. Now she's a mum with a couple of kids, and you know, and got a lot on her plate. So for her, it was important to know that she wasn't dealing with someone dangerous. So that, which is fine. So we had that period of a couple of weeks where she'd ask me questions and I'd answer the questions. And, you know, and what I appreciated from her was she didn't say, oh, it was great you did that. She didn't like what I did. So it wasn't like, oh, suddenly this is a woman who accepts the darkness, because that wasn't me. I don't like what I did. You know, I'm not happy with what I did. It is what it is now. But what she did do was she said, you know, you don't need to do that with me. And just ask for what you want. There was that open, ask for what you want. Let's just be open. Let's be mindful.
So easy. Just ask for what you want.
You know what? She's pretty good at delivering. She's pretty good. So I'm going to give her full points for that.
How about, so communication can be, easy in the beginning and when things are light. How about when you're under pressure, stressed?
A year later, when the rest of the kind of conscious stuff's out of the picture, the newness.
Yeah, well, there's a long conversation there again, so I'll do the dot points. And again, railroad me, whatever. So we had a full-on year in our first year together. And look, she's one of those people that's quite private, and that's fine. So I'm going to respect that privacy and not talk about any of the detail. We had a full-on year. And, you know, there was more than one time where I was the manly man for her, you know. So all those things that we talk about men, you know, protecting and defending and supporting, and I was doing all those things. And, you know, we weren't together 100% of the time because she doesn't live in Melbourne. So I was with her half the week with back in Melbourne, so I could be with my kids half the week. But, you know, the time we had together was like 99.9% awesome. And we had a few hiccups, and it's interesting because she warned me day one. She said, sometimes I do X, Y, Z. And, you know, I had this one boyfriend and he just ignored it and it was okay. But, you know, so it was a kind of warning. And I didn't like that. I got to say, I felt like that was like, I'm going to be an asshole and I need your permission to be an asshole and for you just to suck it up. That's how I heard it, right? So I didn't like that. So that occasionally bit us on the bum because every now and then I go, no, I don't appreciate that. I'm not going to, you know, and I spat the dummy. And then on occasion, what I learned about myself was that, and this manifested itself in the marriage, you know, when I felt like I was going back to the old me, which I then felt, that's destructive. This was before Landmark. The old me, it's destructive. I don't want to destroy this relationship or this person or her life because the signals I'm getting from my ex-wife is I've destroyed her life. So I'm just going to leave the relationship before that happens. So a couple of times I kind of ran away. So, so a few strange things happened during the year, but
how did you resolve that then? How did you go back?
We came back and we talked and we just talked to that. She just said more than once. She just said, I'm not breaking up with you. You don't need to run away. One thing that you and I can do is talk. It sounds like with our previous partners, neither of us could. Yeah. So let's just talk. Let's just talk it out. And so that got us through. And ironically, so I moved in with my daughter late last year, and that meant I spent a lot less time with her, and it was a lot less time where we started to have real trouble, actually. And at the moment, what has resolved that trouble was the new conversation, the new understanding, the new conversation that I can have as a result of what I've learned through Landmark, and B, my doing things like the EFT because, you know, impatience is a big part of how I am. So I get that label of a driven entrepreneur. What I think that is code for is just an impatient fucker, you know, just have everything now. And that's true. It's fair. It's true. So part of me says, don't stop being impatient, but part of me says, well, hurrying doesn't seem to be any better than not hurrying. And I do get a better response when I put less pressure on. Always. I actually always get a better response. Even if I don't see it up front, I always get a better response if I don't pressure. So that different way of being has really helped as well.
Do you see behaviours in your children that you don't love that are similar to behaviours in yourself that you don't love?
Okay. I can, I reckon I can nail that. So, I knew I was having a son before we had a son. And, you know, he turned out to be like a Viking. So I have strong Viking ancestry, Scottish and Viking ancestry. And he looked like a Viking and acted like one as well for the first 6 years. So for him, he was actually just an awesome kid from day one. And I remember he was born 2000. I remember there was a lot of conversations typically around kind of people who had a more alternative view of the world. Oh, you know, there's these babies being born with this special way about them, rah, rah, rah. I just looked at him and thought, yeah, special kid. I've always actually respected him and watched the way he operated and thought, you know, he's done some cool things and, gee, I could learn from that, you know, just learn from his ways. And the truth is he's probably more like his mum than he is like me. And so it's the ability to be more patient and to kind of suck things up more and to respond when he's ready rather than when it's required and things like that. I knew I was going to have a daughter before she was born, and I knew that she was going to come and test me more than probably anybody else. And actually, she hasn't tested me more than anybody else. So she's let me down in that regard. But you know, that's a good way. good result. Cool. And every now and then I'll acknowledge that that's exactly like me, and I feel so sorry for you.
Oh, well, I think we've been chatting for a while. So just to finish up, I'd love to kind of ask you a question about like the kind of legacy that you'd like to leave your children, and what your beliefs are about who you can kind of be as an inspiration for your children, I suppose, or what your beliefs are around that.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that question because that's been part of the journey with me and my business partner.
Yeah.
I've been mates for 30 years, partners for 20 years, and he's been the one person through my life that can handle me. So he just worked out what he worked out what he needed to do, get what he needed from me, and he's done it. So, I'm highly grateful to him. But we actually created a business called Legacy at one stage. And what that was going to be was the empire that we would hand over to our kids. And one day because we tend to come to things separately but at the same time, one of us said to the other, I don't know about this building the empire thing for the kids. I'm not really sure that's the right way. And we agreed. So we backed off from that and decided that it was more about...
Can you back up there and say, like, because you didn't...
Well, to be...
Wrong belief system, like not congruent.
I can't remember exactly what the thought process was, but I have no doubt it was part... For me, it was about some of the personal development and learning what I was learning. Yes. I certainly realised that you look around the world and there's a bunch of kids that get handed stuff and I don't know if most of the time it works, most of the time it doesn't or whatever, but we just hear the bad stories. And Donald Trump's the class A example. There's a conversation about he inherited too much and now look at him. I don't know what the truth is, but that sunk in for me. I thought, and I don't blame the kids. I thought, I'm not good enough to hand that over to them in a way that they are going to handle it properly.
I mean, my thing here, what I'm hearing in my head is your truth is not their truth.
And that is absolutely part of it. Absolutely part of it.
Yeah.
That handing something over to them while I think it might be supportive and beneficial to them, it is. It's saying, here's what I've created, now you've got to make it the way I want it, kind of thing. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was part of it. And then also, I guess the final part for me, and this was a key thing for me and my parenting, was who I really am and who I've been at times for my kids is they have their own journey and it is whatever it is. And my job is to just empower them on that journey. And as you touched on earlier, to answer the questions that they ask, not to tell them shit. Who the hell wants to be told stuff? Nobody does. So answer the questions they've got to help them on their journey. And that's it. Nothing else, nothing more.
Love it. Good place to finish.
And they are awesome kids, and they are benefiting from the fact that I was able to pull my head in. I know that.
So cool.
So are we. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's been really, really awesome conversation and so beneficial, I know, to everyone that listens to it. Yeah. So, thanks for sharing your wisdom. I hope we can do it again.
I thank you. And whenever I let rip, I always feel like it's worth finishing with, my true view of every person is the highest view. I want it, no matter how angry I get with someone, even in the moment, calling them a fuckwit, whatever. I know we've all got more in us. And that's just one of my methods of kicking people hard to wake them up. However, I do not feel that way about anybody. And, I really want anybody that's gotten this far to realize that, I coach because I see the best in everybody and I want the best from everybody.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
So cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alister.
Yeah, we'll sign off.
Bye. Bye.